When you think of Cincinnati, what comes to mind? Probably chili, right? Or maybe baseball. But, there's this whole other side to the city, a hidden history, and that's what we're going to dive into today. The ghosts, the really weird secrets, and some truly tragic tales that tell a completely different and much, much darker story.
So, is it Ohio's most haunted city? Well, if you ask a lot of paranormal investigators, they'll tell you absolutely yes. You see, the city's past, it's deep and honestly pretty grim sometimes. And it didn't just leave behind dusty old records. Oh no, it left behind stories, legends, and this really chilling question: just how many ghosts are still calling this place home?
And when we say it's a city built on graves, we're not being metaphorical. Seriously, parts of Cincinnati are literally built right on top of the dead. And that kind of foundation, one made of forgotten souls and some really violent tragedies, well, it creates the absolute perfect storm for the kinds of stories we're about to get into.
All right, first up, we're going to head to the places where the past just flat out refuses to stay buried. And we're starting with a big one, a place that many people consider one of the most haunted buildings in the entire country.
So before the Cincinnati Music Hall was this, grand, beautiful building, the land it's on had a much darker purpose. It was a potter's field, basically a mass grave for the city's poor, the unclaimed, and even victims of a massive cholera epidemic back in 1832. And if that wasn't enough, it was also the site of an orphanage and a hospital, pest house. Talk about a grim foundation for such a gorgeous landmark.
And like I said, the past here just does not stay buried. Get this. Back in 1927, workers found so many graves they nicknamed the site the Valley of Death. Fast forward to 1988. They're digging a new elevator shaft and, bam, they unearth over 200 pounds of human bones. And it's not ancient history. Just a few years ago in 2017, more renovations, and guess what? They found more grave shafts. The dead are still, quite literally, right under the floorboards.
So with a history like that, is it any surprise that strange things happen here? Not really. Staff and visitors have reported all sorts of chilling encounters. They talk about seeing this silent man in a top hat who just nods at them from the balconies, or hearing the ghostly sound of an orchestra tuning up when the hall is completely empty. And then there's the infamous freight elevator, which was notorious for just moving all by itself.
But, maybe not all of the spirits there are menacing. A former director actually offered a much sweeter theory. He said, what if the ghosts aren't trapped or angry? What if they're just people who loved the hall so much when they were alive, they decided to stay for a permanent encore? Kind of changes how you think about it, right?
Okay, so we've gone from a place haunted by thousands of anonymous souls to a story about one very specific and very tragic ghost. We're heading over to the beautiful Eden Park, where a crime of passion straight out of the Roaring '20s is said to have left, well, a permanent spectral scar on the landscape.
Seriously, this story plays out like something from a movie. You've got George Remus, the so-called king of the bootleggers. While he's locked up, his wife, Emma Jean, not only has an affair, but she also steals his entire fortune. So the day they're supposed to finalize their divorce, he chases her taxi through the park, and right there, he murders her. But here's the kicker, the most shocking part of it all. He represents himself in court and gets acquitted. His defense? Temporary insanity.
And this is the moment that history blurs into a ghost story. To this day, people who visit the park report seeing an apparition, a woman in a black dress, haunting the area near the gazebo where Emma Jean's life was taken so violently. It's like this tragic echo that has refused to fade for almost 100 years.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit, because Cincinnati's hidden history isn't all ghosts and doom and gloom. The city has this deeply, deeply weird and quirky side that is, honestly, just as fascinating. Take this, for example. Right beneath the city streets, you'll find the largest abandoned subway system in the entire United States. No joke. They started building it back in the 1920s, but then costs skyrocketed, the Great Depression hit, and they just stopped. The tunnels are still down there, right now. Just a massive, totally empty public works project frozen in time. And then you've got the city's old nickname, Porkopolis. Yeah, you heard that right. Back in the 19th century, Cincinnati was the pork capital of the world. They herded so many pigs through the actual streets to the slaughterhouses that the city just became known for it. And what's great is that today, they totally embrace that weird history. You'll see flying pig statues all over town, and they even have the super popular Flying Pig Marathon. And for our last quirky fact, this one involves a snack you've definitely had,
The guy who invented the Pringles can, a chemist from Cincinnati named Frederick Bauer, was so incredibly proud of that can that he made a very specific request. He asked to be buried in one, and his family actually did it. They honored his request, which has to be one of the most unusual final resting places I've ever heard of.
All right, now we're going to move into our final section. And I gotta warn you, this is where things get dark again. The horror here isn't supernatural, it's chillingly real. We're talking about stories of human cruelty and devastating natural disasters that have also left their mark on the city's identity.
57. Just let that number sink in. 57. That's the potential number of victims murdered by Donald Harvey. He was a nurse's aide who worked in hospitals around Cincinnati, and he turned out to be one of the most prolific serial killers in American history.
People called him the Angel of Death because his whole story was that he was doing mercy killings, to end his patient's suffering. But that was a lie. He later admitted that it wasn't always true. Sometimes he killed just for the thrill of it, or because he was angry. And he used poisons like arsenic and cyanide, or just plain suffocation, to cover his tracks.
But the real-world horror wasn't just human. The city has also faced just immense tragedy from Mother Nature. Back in 1937, the Ohio River went on a rampage. Now its flood stage is 52 feet. That year, it crested at an unbelievable 80 feet, and it triggered an absolute catastrophe.
The devastation was just staggering. A full 10% of the entire city was underwater. An estimated 100,000 people were suddenly homeless. The power grid, the water supply, all of it was cut off. And then, to make a nightmare situation even worse, gas tanks ruptured and a massive fire broke out on top of the floodwaters. It was, without a doubt, the worst natural disaster the city has ever seen. So, after digging into all of this, the ghosts, the bizarre oddities, the real-world horrors, what does it all add up to? What do these lingering secrets really tell us about a place like Cincinnati?
Well, I think it shows us that a city is so much more than just its skyline or its sports teams, right? Its real identity is more like a mosaic, built from all of its stories, the good, the bad, and the weird. The ghost of Imogene Remus, the strange legacy of Porcopolis, the tragic memory of the Great Flood, these are all essential pieces of the puzzle that make Cincinnati, well, Cincinnati.
And really, that leaves us with one last thought. These kinds of stories, they're not just found in one city in Ohio, not at all. Every town, every city, every place has a past that haunts it in some way, with its own ghosts, its own strange secrets, and its own tragedies. So the real question is, what stories are hiding just beneath the surface right where you live?